The kids who hacked Xbox. Here it is. All right.
This is David Pecora. He's
All
22 years old, has shoulder-length blonde hair, and studies computer science.
All right, David.
His online names are Xenon and Xenomega. He's part of the
Wait, weren't these the guys who got like the developer consoles like before they came out for like the public or whatever? Like, you know, the public only got like a specific type of console. Like they had the developer consoles and stuff, so like they could hack into the system.
Xbox community, tweaking consoles and creating cheats for games like Halo and Call of Duty. Right now, he has an annoying problem. The bumper of his car is broken, and the dealer refuses to ship the parts to Canada. So he asks his friend Justin, who lives in the US, if he can order the new bumper to his house. They met each other years ago on the internet. Justin lives in Wilmington, about an 8-hour drive away. David's plan is to drive there, get the bumper, maybe grab something to eat together, and head back home. His dad offers to tag along so they can
W friend.
take turns driving. They take the family car. About an hour later, David and his dad get to the border.
Also, if you can't ship the bumper to Canada, just ask somebody else to ship the bumper you need, bro. Is it really that hard? You really gotta drive 8 hours just to get some stupid bumper, bro. Really?
The US border officer checks their passports. He's about to wave them through when he sees a strange name on his display. "What's Xenon?" the officer asks. David flinches. That's his online name. But why on earth does it pop up here at the passport control? Two figures in dark uniforms approach the vehicle. They pull their weapons and tell him to step out of the car.
Oh yeah, he's cooked, bro. I literally knew it. All he had to do was just get parts from his nearby auto shop in Canada. But no, let me just drive 8 hours to get some stupid part for my bumper.
David gets arrested. He walked right into a trap. The thing is, David may have done more than tweaking consoles and coding cheats.
Okay.
The FBI has been after him for years. He's part of a hacker gang that will become to known as the Xbox Underground. They are responsible for an unprecedented series of cyber attacks on some of the biggest tech firms on the planet. They stole thousands of login credentials.
Wait, weren't these the kids that hacked into like Disney and like they played some like Call of Duty Modern Warfare like on like a live?
Heisted the source code of unpublished games
Disney Channel.
and hacked into confidential US military simulations. They didn't do it on behalf of some government agency. Sometimes they didn't even make money with it. They were just a bunch of teenagers.
Fire animation, bro.
This entire story is based on the fabulous Wired article and a double episode of the highly recommendable podcast, Darknet Diaries. You'll find the links in the description. David was always destined to become a hacker. He's still in elementary school when he builds his own little web browser. He simply teaches himself
He did that in elementary school. Dang, bro is smart.
how to code.
I remember all I did in elementary school was just eat cookies and sit on my butt all day. I mean, I maybe went out like once or twice, but that was it.
In 2001, David's world and that of countless other kids changes forever. The OG Xbox is released.
For the first time, let me now unveil Xbox.
Back then, the Xbox marks a technological milestone, a bunch of high-end hardware packed into a massive black casing.
Dude, I remember I had the Xbox 360, dude. I remember one time that thing was on the red circle of death. If y'all ever had an Xbox, you know what I'm talking about, right? It was on the red circle of death. You know how we fixed it? We just took that thing and put it in a fridge, bro. And it worked perfectly fine the next day.
Black and green dashboard and the ridiculously oversized controller kind of give off nuclear reactor vibes. It's a completely new aesthetic at the time. David gets one and hopelessly falls in love with Halo. But he's not just a passionate gamer. He's fascinated by the Xbox's tech. He becomes part of the fast-growing online community of like-minded nerds. They crack their consoles and get their own software running. They stream music, install Linux, and even manage to boot up Nintendo games. David is extremely talented and quickly gains cred in the scene. He starts writing programs for Halo that let you tweak the physics or even the weather in the game. Then, in 2005, the Xbox 360 drops and changes everything. Again. Microsoft learned from its mistakes and bolstered the console's security. To hack the new Xbox, you need a development kit. That's a special console with extra features, just for developers.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like, weren't these the one kids like who paid like $2,000 for a developer kit? Like, really? I don't get why you would pay $2,000 for that, bro. Just get the normal PlayStation and just play with it, bro. The normal Xbox and just play with it, bro. I had to do it with the Red Circle of Death too. I did not like it, but just deal with it, bro. Really? Is it that serious?
These dev kits are incredibly hard to get. Developers need to be verified by Microsoft to have one. For everyone else, they're strictly off limits. It takes a while, but eventually a few dev kits start popping up online. Someone has found thousands of them at a recycling yard. Microsoft must have tried to trash them, but now someone is making money by selling them. In 2008, David acquires several of these dev kits for himself and resells a few. This is how he meets Justin May, his buddy from Wilmington. Online, Justin goes by MTW. The dev kit gives David access to PartnerNet, a closed platform where Xbox developers upload test versions of their games. He spends his nights scouring PartnerNet, posting screenshots of unreleased games and making a name for himself in online forums. He starts showing up late to school. His grades are slipping. But he thinks, what if this is my ticket to a career in game development?
In the end, all will serve.
In 2010, David catches the attention of a guy named Dylan Wheeler. Dylan is 14 and lives in Perth, Australia. He has long brown hair and is in the middle of puberty.
My question is, how do people learn how to do this stuff at like the ages like 14, 16, like 13? Like, how do people even do this in elementary is my question. Like, y'all gotta be like smart.
It's a good thrill and got into hacking early on. In high school, Dylan got suspended for hacking into the school's network. But he doesn't like to be told what to do.
Nah, that's crazy. Bro had bad grades and was like, hold on, let me just change that real quick. F. Let's do A real quick. Yo, have y'all never ever went on y'all's school teacher's computer real quick just to check y'all grade? Like, I've seen one kid, bro. He went on the school teacher's computer, right? He went behind it, and he literally just changed his grade from an F to an A. And he never got caught. I was like, bro, yo, how'd you get away with that? And he was like, oh, the teacher was gone. I'm like, I'm sure she doesn't mind. She didn't notice nothing.
So he
And he got away with it to this day, bro. Nobody ever caught him.
Got suspended again.
I'm pissed about that.
He's
Because I had to
fascinated by
work my
what
ass
David and
off.
others are doing with the Xbox and wants in on the action. So he signs up to the Xbox hacking forum. His online moniker is Superday. That same year, 2010, another Xbox 360 dev kit ends up in the hands of Sanad Nishayawat. Sanad is 24, lives in Washington, New Jersey, and is a true tech enthusiast. He started gaming by 8. By 12, he was taking apart entire consoles. His room is packed with electronics. His desk is covered by a soldering iron, an oscilloscope.
Dude, where are they getting all this money from to buy all this technology? Because I know back in the day, technology was not cheap, bro. It was like $1,000 just to get an Xbox. And all that equipment right there is probably like $10K.
And all sorts of electronic parts. He dives into the Xbox scene and calls himself Sonic. It's an incredibly exciting time for David, Justin, Dylan, Sanad, and many others. PartnerNet is an absolute goldmine. They get to play new games months before their release, completely free of charge. But at some point, they start getting into trouble with real developers on the platform. In 2009, David finds a way to use cheats for the brand new Call of Duty game. He sets up a server and charges users for using his cheats. $100 per 30 minutes. Players can walk through.
Oh, so that's how they got all their money to buy all that technology. But who's out here spending $100 for 30 minutes of playtime? Really? Like, these motherfuckers gotta have bank, bro.
Walls and fire without ever missing a shot. The cheat business is a huge success. David quickly makes up to $8,000 a day. He takes his girl.
8K a day? And he's like, what, 16? Dang, boy, I might start me some servers, y'all. Give me my 8K cash out. My buy a Lambo.
Girlfriend to fancy restaurants and stays in luxury hotels. Activision, the developer behind Call of Duty, catches wind of David's scheme. They send him cease and desist letters and threaten to sue. But David doesn't respond. They're just video games, he thinks. It's not like he's hacking into servers and stealing information. Well, not yet. The Xbox Underground story is so insane, it would definitely deserve its own website. You know who also deserves their own website? You. A portfolio site is a One night, Dylan gets a message from an online friend named GamerFreak1727. It contains a list of usernames and matching email addresses and passwords, all taken from a form run by game developer Epic Games. At the time, Epic is mostly known for Unreal Tournament and Gears of War. Dylan checks the list and finds the login credentials of an IT employee at Epic Games. He wonders if that person uses the same password on other sites. He tries to log in to the employee's
Wait, how do you even get the email and password?
Gmail account, and it works.
Bro, he didn't say how he got the password though. Was it on like a leaked site?
He combs through the inbox and finds another password, admin060606. It gives him access to an internal network at Epic Games. Dylan sends David a message to tell him about his find. David is hooked. One of the servers are hosting unreleased games. He knows that what they're doing is illegal, so he sets himself some limits. No looking at customer data or credit card information. He's only interested in the games. David and Dylan spend months rummaging through the Epic servers on the hunt for anything interesting. And sure enough, they eventually find something, an early build of Gears of War 3, complete with source code. They can't believe their luck. They're on the verge of playing one of the most anticipated games of the year, months before anyone else. They message Sanad to let him in on their discovery. He has a hacked modem at home that lets him cover up his IP address. So
Okay, but how are they communicating without like getting caught by the FBI? Because like back in the day, they didn't have Discord, right? They just had landline. You would have had a call on like a landline, right? And if you did that, it would have interrupted your entire internet connection. So how are they calling each other and talking about the news?
can download the game without getting caught. Sanad logs into Epic's network and grabs the files. It's hundreds of gigabytes of data. He stays up all night until the download finally completes. He's too excited to go to sleep. He burns the data onto 8 Blu-rays and mails them to David. He writes the words wedding videos on the package. David receives the package and tries the game. The build is still pretty raw. A lot of the textures are missing. It's not really playable at this stage. David sends the game to the others, including Justin. Just a few days later, the game appears online as a public download. The leak makes headlines everywhere.
Last week, Gears of War 3 was leaked on the web. Gears developer Epic Games confirmed that this is not the final build of the game and warned people that downloading the title may actually melt your system. Not sure if that's true, but scare tactics aside, don't pirate.
Yeah, they're capping. It's not melting their system, trust me. They just don't want people downloading that game for free.
Pirating sucks.
The guys are still snooping around the Epic Games network when they stumble upon a very unsettling email. Epic Games has called the FBI because of the leak, but it seems the feds are not onto them yet. David is freaking out. He asks Justin to help him crypt his hard drives. Sanad decides to lay low and wait for things to calm down. Dylan, however, doesn't care about the FBI. He keeps logging into the
Here's what's gonna happen. Dylan's gonna get caught first, right? And he's gonna rat out everybody else like the rat he is.
servers, while the feds are actively scanning them to find the hackers. His ballsiness pays off. Dylan finds a USB drive connected to the network, and on that drive he finds a list of all the company's important access credentials. Dylan now has full access to Epic's network. From that point on, he logs into the network every single day. He roams around the PCs of Epic employees and taps their
But dude, do they not select the logins like at different IP addresses like in their office?
webcams. He sits at his computer in Australia and watches them in real time while they move around the office or sit in meetings. He mostly exploits human error.
Ooh, bro's stalking. I thought he was just hacking, bro. Bro's a weirdo.
He searches data breaches for login credentials and then tries them on other sites. Eventually, he manages to also hack into the network of other companies. Dylan is on a serious hacking spree. David and Sanad find out what he is doing and jump back in. They just can't resist. One by one, they hack the networks of tech giants like Microsoft, EA, Bungie, Blizzard, Valve, and Activision. They keep digging deeper and deeper, downloading more and more unreleased games. It's like a fever dream. The guys have been hacking their way through the gaming industry for almost a year now. From time to time, they're also making money off of it. David starts selling the jacked and unreleased games to a user called Xbox Dev Guy. The contact is established via Justin. But deep down, they're still just a bunch of gaming fans. They invite their friends over to show their new video games. They never reveal where they get them from. They're a small and tight-knit group, but they can't always keep the excitement to themselves. So every now and then, word gets out to the wider scene. And every time that happens, new people want in on the action. 2 new faces join the group.
Okay, but see, here's the thing with having too many people in your group. There's bound to be one guy who's a rat by heart. When he gets caught, he's not going to face like 10 years of prison time. He's going to rat out, snitch all y'all out, bro. That's why y'all need to keep to yourselves. I know it's hard, but in this situation, keep to yourself.
Austin Alcala is a 16-year-old high school student from McCordsville, Indiana. He's tall, rather shy and reserved. Online, he goes by AA Monkey. The second newbie is Nathan LaRue, an 18-year-old from Bowie, Maryland. His dad works as a diesel mechanic, and his mom is busy homeschooling him. Nathan has written a program to fake FIFA coins and dreams of becoming a proper game developer someday. Online, he calls himself Anime Freak. The group expands their hacking activities, and their virtual break-ins move further and further away from gaming. AMD, Intel, Disney, Warner Brothers, and Google. They end up infiltrating the servers of almost 25 companies, all of them major corporations.
EVE Online on Mac immerses you in a universe.
A late summer evening in 2012, Austin and Nathan are poking around the servers of Zombie Studios, a developer known for war games like the Spec Ops series. They discover a tunnel that leads them straight to a US military server. The drives.
What? How does Spec Ops lead to the U.S. military? Like, does U.S. Army personnel play Spec Ops? Is my question. Like, do they have like their passwords like linked to that? Like, I don't know how that works.
Host a new game Zombie Studios is working on, AH-64D, Apache Simulator, a flight simulator commissioned by the U.S. Department of Defense. They hesitate. This is bigger than anything they have found so far, and much more dangerous. Curiosity ends up getting the best of them, and they download the game. The group is at its peak. They've been active for over 2 years.
Cooked.
They've gone places no one else could.
If you're gonna do anything, don't mess with the military. The military will find you and get you, bro. Trust me. You do not want to mess with them boys.
David, Dylan, Sanad, Austin, and Nathan have become the core of the group. Others are loosely involved in individual hacks. Altogether, there are almost a dozen strong now. They're aware that everything that they have done could already land them in jail. But they just can't stop. They joke about what they would call their gang in prison. Xbox Underground sounds pretty badass, they think. They laugh at the idea, but not for much longer. Justin, aka MTW, was an early member of the group. He met David when he bought the Xbox 360 dev kit from him a few years ahead of the Epic Games hack. Justin was directly involved in many of their operations. A few days before Gears of War 3 was leaked, Justin got the game from the others in the group. Some of them, like Sanad, suspected that he was the one who put it online. Justin is almost 3 years older than David, but compared to him, he's a lot less cautious. In 2010, Justin attends PAX East, a video game convention.
Oh yeah, this is the guy who this is like the one guy who just went straight into the area you're not supposed to, right? And he got caught and kicked out of the event.
In Boston. He gets calls from Sanad and a few others in the group. They ask him if he can hack into one of the networks on site. Maybe he'll find something interesting.
Yeah, he gets caught putting his USB drive in one of the computers when he's not supposed to, dude. I don't know why they didn't arrest him there.
No big deal if not. Justin gives it a try, but doesn't find a breach to exploit. The network is too secure. He's not ready to give it up, though. He walks around the convention center and finds the stand of a small developer called Atomic Games. They're showcasing a new shooter called Breach. Justin waits until one of the employees heads to the bathroom. Then he sneaks behind the stand and secretly tries to download the game onto his laptop. But the employee comes back sooner than expected. At just 14 megabytes,
He's cooked.
Justin has to cancel the download and make a run for it. 2 Atomic employees chase after him and quickly catch him. They take him to the police. During the arrest, Justin tries to bribe the officers. He offers them $100 if they let him go. During the interrogation, he openly admits he was trying to steal the game. He repeatedly tells the cops that he has names of people bigger and more important than himself. When the others hear about the arrest, they get suspicious.
This idiot, bro. He's about to get the whole group out because of him.
What if Justin has been talking to the cops? He loses their trust. He disappears for a while, but eventually gets back in touch, trying to regain their trust. Now he is scamming companies like Cisco, Microsoft, and Lenovo with a return fraud scheme. Someone like that couldn't possibly be working with the cops. Some in the group, like David and Dylan, are thinking. Others, like Sanad, remain skeptical. After some time,
Like, Sanad is smart, bro. He's thinking about the future. He knows Justin's a rat if he's already ratted them out once.
Justin manages to get back on board. Back to August 2012, David and Dylan are poking around Microsoft servers. They come across a folder that seems pretty well protected. Looks like only a few developers have access to it. Maybe the company is working on some super secret project, they think. They download the folder and find a bunch of technical documents. Some pics of circuit boards and casings, source code, all that kind of stuff. They wonder what all of this could be for, and they quickly piece it together. They found the plans for the upcoming Xbox console, codename Durango. It'll later be called the Xbox One. They ponder what to do with the plans. They could sell them to others, or they could try to build the console themselves. All parts seem to be available on the market. They order the parts online and have everything
Okay, but then they need the software for it, though. Are they going to hack that out, too?
shipped to Nathan's house. He volunteers to assemble the gaming console, and it works. The group now has a working prototype of the new Xbox, but no games to test it with, so they decide to sell it. They find a buyer in the Seychelles who is willing to pay $5,000. The buyer transfers the money, and the group discusses who is going to ship the console to him. Justin steps up. He offers to take it to the post office. The group agrees. Justin drives from Delaware to Bowie, about a 2-hour ride, and picks up the console at Nathan's place. But the package never makes it to the Seychelles. They start to get nervous. What if the FBI has intercepted the package? After the sale falls through, Dylan decides to upload the pictures of their prototype online, just to see what happens. He doesn't consult with the others. That means the Xbox prototype is now seemingly publicly up for auction on eBay. By now, Dylan is already known for his impulsive actions. In early 2012, he got drunk, called Epic Games, and confessed to hacking their servers. He explained to the employees over the phone how he did it and asked
Oh, it's Dylan. It's done. It's not Justin anymore. Never mind. I changed my mind. Dylan is the rat.
poster as a reward. He actually got one. This time, things get even worse. The eBay auction goes viral. In no time, bids reach over $20,000. But the sale doesn't go through because Microsoft files a copyright claim. Dylan, who set up the auction under his online name, Superday, starts giving online interviews.
We have someone who's gotten pretty world-renowned over the past couple of weeks here. I'm just gonna go straight to the chase here. His name is Dylan. Most people probably know him by his moniker Superday. He's gotten himself into a little bit of trouble with
Dylan, shut up! Can you shut up, Super Day?
Microsoft and I guess he's taking the hacking community by storm. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Sanad and David are pissed at Dylan. Really pissed. After leaving traces all over the internet, this kind of attention is the last thing they need. David cuts off all ties with Dylan. The only ones even more pissed are the people at Microsoft. The investigation picks up speed. Just weeks after the auction, the FBI raids Nathan's, aka Anime Freak's, house and arrest him. Sanad Nishayawat, aka Sonic, tries to distance himself from the group, but his house gets raided too. He sends a copy of the search warrant to others in the group, including Dylan. Dylan then posts the name of the agents who raided Sanad's house online. He publicly threatens to send hitmen after them, a statement he later regrets. In February 2013, Dylan Wheeler, also known as Superday, is finally arrested by Australian authorities.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want to shut up, Dylan. That's what you get, bro.
Austin has learned from Nathan how to fake FIFA coins and turned it into a business. Justin is involved in scams of his own. Both of them lay low for a while. David also keeps a low profile in Canada after he learns about the string of arrests. Well, at least until he gets a chance to snag an actual prototype of the new Xbox. David is at a concert when he gets a call from Austin. Austin tells him about an 18-year-old hacker named Armin, aka Armin the Cyber. Armin claims to have access to Microsoft Campus and offers them a deal. He will sneak in and steal a real Durango prototype, in exchange for some Microsoft server credentials and a few $1,000s. David thinks Armin is nuts, but again, his
Max,
curiosity...
bro, you're not sneaking into Microsoft's facility. They got security guards. They got hundreds of personnel there. Like, how are you about to pull off that mission? That's mission impossible right there.
gets the better of him, and he agrees. At 9 p.m., Armin drives his car to Microsoft campus. He's wearing a sweater with the company logo and carrying a big backpack. He has cloned some employee's access card and has no trouble getting in. The premises are enormous, but Armin knows his way around by now. For almost a year, he has been frequently sneaking into the buildings and dreaming of what it would actually be like to work there. He is a huge fan of Microsoft. He has even applied for a job, but has not heard back yet. Armin enters one of the office buildings. He is nervous. He's been there many times, but never to steal anything. There's still a few people around. Whenever he hears footsteps approaching, he hides. He eventually finds what he's looking for in one of the open plan offices on the 3rd floor. His hands are shaking as he stuffs 3 Xbox prototypes into his backpack. He sneaks out of the building, leaves the premises, and drives back home. He sends 2 of the consoles to David and Austin and keeps one for himself. Just a week after his break-in, Armin gets a call. It's Microsoft.
Yup, Armin is cooked. I don't even know how Microsoft found him, but they did.
They reviewed his application. He's got the job. It's a dream come true. But only a couple of weeks later, Armin loses the job. Surveillance cameras have caught him stealing the prototypes. He's taken into custody. In January 2014,
Armin, you had to steal the Microsoft prototypes now, did you? If you just wouldn't have stolen them, you would have had a nice, cushy job on Microsoft.
Austin Alcala, aka AA Monkey, is arrested at his house by 4 FBI agents. In March, David Pecora, Xenomega, gets arrested at the US border. David, Sanad, Austin, and Nathan stand trial together in the US. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, Dylan is also facing charges. The group is accused of identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy to steal millions of dollars worth of intellectual property. The indictment is extremely detailed. The FBI must have been building the case for a long time. There are chat logs and transcripts of personal conversations dating back to the first Epic Games hack in 2011. In court, prosecutors even play audio recordings that must have been secretly made during their hacking sessions.
But the funny thing is, I still have root access to all their computers.
Wait, what? So wait, did the FBI tap into their computers and they record their audio that way? Alright, I don't know how they did that, but WFBI.
Because I signed in yesterday.
So he knowingly logs into Epic, knowing that's still there.
What do you mean?
He in the emails, they were emailing FBI people, and he knows that they talk to each other, but he still manages to not care.
I have it to the US military. I have it to the Australian Department of Defense. I have every single big company. Intel, AMD, Nvidia, Google, Microsoft, Disney, Warner Brothers, everything.
The indictment repeatedly mentions Person A. Person A provided most of the evidence for the FBI. Person A allegedly helped David encrypt his hard drive and sell unreleased games to a user named Xbox Dev Guy. Person A is also said to have delivered a self-made prototype of the new Xbox to the FBI.
I get a copy of the indictment, and I start reading about Person A from Wilmington, Delaware. We all only knew one person from Wilmington, Delaware. Justin.
So Justin was the snitch this whole time, bro. He couldn't keep his mouth shut.
Justin. All signs point to him being an informant of the FBI. Did he cut a deal with the police after the incident at the convention? Is that how he got away with all of his scams? No one knows for sure. The guys in the US plead guilty. They all have very different ways of coping with the conviction. David is cooperative. He helps the investigators understand how they bypass the systems of billion-dollar corporations. The officers are pretty impressed by the 23-year-old's skills. He spends 18 months in prison. After getting out, he finishes college and starts working for cybersecurity firms. Austin gets 3 years probation. He doesn't serve a single day in jail because he agrees to help the FBI with another fraud case involving fake FIFA coins. He later becomes the head of cybersecurity at a social media startup. Sanad serves the same sentence as David, 18 months. He too gets out, but the following years are very hard on him. He starts working at a vape store and goes to college. But his probation officer bans him from using a computer and constantly harasses him.
Everything that I would ever ask her would always be a no. For example, I would want to go down and see, my sister in Virginia or something, and it's no. It could be, she would come up with the craziest reasons to why she wouldn't let me.
Al correctional officer, bro. All the other guys came out good men after this whole situation. They were just kids. You're really not going to let him see his sister?
Do anything.
Sanad became more and more isolated and eventually slips into depression. Seeing no prospects for himself, he turns to drugs. His probation officer sees this as a violation of his probation terms. She drags him before a judge, who sentences Sanad to another 9 months behind bars. In 2019, Sanad's probation for his second sentence ends, and for the first time in years, he's allowed to use a computer. He's now clean and living with his sister. Nathan is terrified of having to go to jail. He's one of the youngest in the group and a gentle person. Of all of them, he was the least involved in the hacks. Nathan applies for bail until the verdict is final. He gets an ankle monitor and is allowed to stay with his parents, but the thought of what awaits him in prison eats him up. One day, he cuts off the ankle monitor and tries to flee. He pays a friend to drive him to the Canadian border, but the police catch him at the border checkpoint. Nathan panics. He jumps out of the car and runs across the bridge towards the border, but the cops catch him. He is desperate and considers jumping off the bridge. Then he pulls out a knife and injures himself until he collapses. He survives and is almost immediately taken back to jail, this time serving a 2-year sentence. Shortly before his release, Nathan comes out as trans and is now Holly. The time in prison must have been awful. Just a year after their release, Holly takes their own life.
And that's what happens when you drop the soup, y'all. So you just don't drop the soup, alright? And you'll be good.
Australia, Dylan is the only one who pleads not guilty. This leads to a series of court cases that drag on for over 3 years.
I guess I pled not guilty to the sense that they tried to hit me with everything when there wasn't everything that I did. At the start, they put a lot of false charges on me.
Dylan is ordered to surrender his passport, but instead he heads to the airport and flies to the Czech Republic. He has Czech citizenship because his mother is from there. Shortly after, Dylan's mother is sentenced to 18 months in prison for aiding his escape. Dylan claims that his mother neither drove him to the airport nor sent him money.
Yeah, it's kind of a harsh reality of everything. You know, someone's got to go down for something.
Dylan moved to the UK, where he established a cybersecurity firm and gave talks on security-related topics.
I'm not hiding, because I'm not doing anything wrong. I did something when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, an underage teenager. It was wrong.
Sad, bro.
I learned from that.
In March 2020,
his mother got arrested for what he did.
Dylan shuts down his company. There's been no trace of him since. In 2017, when almost all members of the Xbox Underground had served their sentences, the police finally arrest Justin May. The authorities seized a brand new BMW and nearly $40,000 in cash. In 2021, he was convicted of fraud, fencing, tax evasion, and money laundering. He was sentenced to almost 8 years in prison and fined $4 million.
If your YouTube...
Well, that was crazy. Let's see what we have next. The hunt for Ted Bundy. I might as well because this guy has a good channel. How'd they even get to
Bob Hayward, a highway patrol officer from Salt Lake City, sits in his car in front of his house on Hogan Street. He's just finishing his shift when a tan Volkswagen Beetle passes by with its lights turned off. Hayward knows his neighborhood and realizes this car is most likely not from here. The officer goes on and checks. The Volkswagen Beetle parks right in front of his neighbor's house. The owners are not home, only their 17 and 19-year-old daughters, alone. He turns on his brights to read the license plate. This startles the driver and he speeds away. Hayward chases him. The driver blows past one and then another stop sign. Hayward has no intention of letting the man escape. A few minutes later, the Beetle finally stops at an abandoned gas station. A man gets out of his vehicle with his hands up. He wears blue jeans, a black turtleneck, and tennis shoes.
Yeah, that's what she gave you, pedophile. Should not went to meet a 17-year-old girl.
He has shoulder-long dark hair and smells of weed. Hayward points his gun at him. The man says he's a law student and was at the local drive-in watching Towering Inferno. He got lost on his way home. The only problem is that Hayward drove by the theater earlier. Towering Inferno was not being shown that night. The officer checks the man's car and sees something very strange. The passenger seat is missing. In its place is an open bag with multiple very strange items. A ski mask, a crowbar, an ice pick, a box of trash bags, gloves, a pantyhose, rope, and some wire. In the trunk, Hayward also discovers a pair of handcuffs.
I'm going to arrest you tonight for evading an officer, mister. But I intend to ask the county attorney for a complaint against you for possession of burglary tools.
Back at the police station, the man gets registered and photographed. While he had the necessary tools, there was no burglary to directly link them to. But without any evidence, he is free to leave the station on bail. Bob Hayward is suspicious. He's convinced that the man wanted to break into his neighbor's house with those two girls inside. Though it was only much later that Hayward would realize the man he arrested that night was none other than America's most infamous killer, Ted Bundy. And it will take a lot more to finally catch him.
He's not a wild beast to look at or to hear.
Her viciously, biting her.
He was thoughtful, charismatic.
And clubbing her to death.
He was quite personable.
Slow down, my young friend. You think you can touch the sky? Where did it all go wrong?
Ted Bundy.
The 70s and 80s are the era of serial killers in the US. Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Charles Manson.
Well, yeah, because back in the 70s and 80s, there really was no technology that was able to, like, track people down, you know what I'm saying? So basically what people could do is they could kill anybody they wanted, right? And they would not get caught. Because there was no surveillance, there was no genetic data, there was none of that.
But one of them stands out, Ted Bundy. He's handsome, articulate, likable, even.
Well, I'm sure it works.
That dude is not no handsome man, bro. He's probably a 4 at best.
You've got to have faith it'll work, or else you'd be reduced to some kind of, mumbling idiot.
Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24th, 1946. He's a smart boy and grows up in a relatively normal working-class family.
I grew up in a wonderful home with 2 dedicated and loving parents, one of 5 brothers and sisters. A home where we as children were the focus of my parents' lives, where we regularly attended church. 2 Christian parents who did not drink, they did not smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home, but it was a fine, solid Christian home.
But not everything is all right with Ted. From as early of an age as 3 years old, he does strange things. When his aunt is sleeping, he arranges kitchen knives around her. When outside playing in the forest, he frequently takes apart
Don't tell me he's fantasizing about killing people too. Because last 2 videos I just watched, bro, there was people fantasizing about killing people and shooting up a school. So he better not have been having that fantasy.
Ice. When swimming, he more than once tries to drown others. He never shows any signs of guilt.
Yeah, it's because he got psychosis.
For a few years, he and his mother lived together with his grandparents. His family is religious.
But see, here's the thing. You can be a psychopath and choose not to be bad. There was actually a man who was studying psychopaths, right? He was a psychologist, right? And he later found out that he was a psychopath himself. Because of, he wasn't showing, much love to his children and stuff, right? But he wasn't even a bad guy. Some psychopaths are not even that bad people.
His grandfather, a deacon. But the grandfather is also abusive and violent, a racist wife-beater and collector of violent porn. Despite all this, Bundy adores him and regularly peeks into his collection. Ted is intelligent and good-looking, but he is also very shy. A loner who is often bullied at school, he sometimes has serious outbursts of rage and does not quite fit in with the other kids his age. During his first years at college, Ted is insecure and has almost no social life. A positive memory for him is when he buys a 1968 tan Volkswagen. It gives him a sense of freedom and independence. Over time, Ted Bundy builds the perfect mask.
And welcome back to this U.S. Open office plan.
Miller just lobbed a message way over Jones.
He appears as a confident and charming young man now, graduates in psychology, starts dating girls, and attends law school. But he doesn't care much.
Alright, bro's risen. I'll admit that. He was, like, listen, he was not all that, bro. This guy's glazing him, bro. He is not like a 10 out of 10 Giga Chad, bro.
Much about the law himself. As a teenager, Bundy had a lengthy history of theft. When he turned 18, it was wiped. But the desire to commit a crime grows and grows inside him. On February 1st, 1974, Bundy breaks into a student's home, abducts, and kills his very first victim, Linda Ann Healy.
What did Linda do to him? Did Linda reject him, rightfully so?
Bundy's victims are always attractive young women. He approaches them in public places, faking an injury or disability and luring them to his car. When his charm and good looks convinces the women that he's no threat, he beats them unconscious.
This dude is glazing, bro. He does not look that good. I promise you he does not.
For the bodies, he has a place on the floor of his tan Volkswagen right where the passenger seat used to be. He drives to a secluded location where he brutally rapes, strangles, and kills them, often not even stopping there. Every month, more and more women disappear, first in Washington, then in Utah. The public is afraid. The police are desperate. For a very long time, nobody has a clue who did all this or how to find them. Before Ted Bundy, the term serial killer simply did not exist in people's minds. His facade is always well maintained. He even briefly works for the Seattle Crime Commission and writes a rape prevention pamphlet for women. Bundy knows exactly.
Okay, so he's trying to act innocent by writing all these, like, rape pamphlets and stuff like that.
How to not leave any evidence. DNA tests were not yet invented, and even if the police would find something, departments at the time rarely shared information.
Yeah, facts. That's what I'm saying. Like, back in the day, it was way easier to get away with a crime because there was no DNA evidence, CCTV, and police areas did not share information, like you just said here.
State borders. But on November 8th, 1974, Ted Bundy makes a crucial mistake. He leaves a witness. If these murders had happened today, the hunt for Bundy might have ended much sooner. Fingerprint matching and other computing techniques have transformed police work over the last decades. Data science is relevant in countless fields today, and it's not magic. Brilliant can be a great first step to get your foot in the door.
I knew it, bro. I literally knew this was about to be a sponsorship, bro. All this be doing this. All this be making it seem like off the topic, bro. Or some random thing, and then it's just an act. All this be tricking. Chapter 2 escapes.
Carol DeRanch is 18 years old. She's driving her 1974 maroon Camaro onto the parking lot of a Sears mall. She parks under a light and walks into the building. Carol is looking for books and stands just outside of Walden's bookstore when a man approaches her. He introduces himself as Officer Roseland from the Murray Police Department. He is polite and well-dressed. Someone was trying to break into your car, he says. Then asks the woman whether they should check if anything is missing. She agrees and they both go back to the parking lot. Carol looks into her Camaro, but everything is there. The police officer tells her that the suspect is back at the police station. If she joins him, they could file a complaint. Carol smells a slight whiff of alcohol and starts feeling uneasy, but the officer shows her a badge and she agrees to come with him. They go to the...
No, bro, always trust your gut. If you smell alcohol and that's an officer, then absolutely do not go with them, bro. Because he has a fake badge, it's fake, trust me. As an officer on duty, you cannot have alcohol.
Officer's vehicle, but it's not a police car. It's a tan Volkswagen Beetle. Maybe he's undercover, Carol thinks. She feels a bit nervous, but gets into the car anyway. A few minutes later, the man stops the car at an elementary school. He suddenly grabs her arm and handcuffs her. Carol starts screaming when he pulls out a gun. Carol is terrified. Luckily, she realizes that her handcuffs aren't attached to anything, so she grabs the door and quickly jumps out of the car. The man chases after her and pulls out a crowbar. He hits the woman once, twice, but Carol holds up her arms in defense, fighting for her life. Another car is approaching. Carol manages to break loose, runs away, and jumps into the other car. She goes straight to the police and reports...
Imagine she jumps in the other car and it's like Jeffrey Dahmer, bro. Like, what are the odds of that? Like, she just gets out and she escapes from Ted Bundy and then jumps into Jeffrey Dahmer's car.
The man who introduced himself as Officer Roseland in his Volkswagen Tan Beetle. Bob Hayward is so unsettled by the man he arrested, the next day he mentions him to his brother, Captain Pete Hayward, a homicide detective. The detectives at the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office immediately recognized the car. A year ago, a woman in Seattle reported suspicious behavior by her boyfriend. She saw an eyewitness drawing from a kidnapping that looked just like him. The woman's boyfriend also had a tan Volkswagen. 10 women have gone missing, and the man is on the list of suspects. The detectives start connecting the dots and invite Carol to police lineup. 8 suspects in total are standing in line, including the man Bob Hayward arrested a few weeks ago. When Carol DeRanche sees them, she immediately identifies the fake officer. On March 1st, 1976, Bundy is sentenced to 15 years in prison for the attempted kidnapping of Carol DeRanche. The investigation picks up pace, and the police manage to connect him to another case, 23-year-old Karen Campbell. In October 1976, Bundy is sent to Colorado to stand trial again, this time for murder. If only his story ended here.
You're telling me he got free after all that? There's no way. He actually killed somebody and he got set free. You're lying.
I would tell you if...
In his second trial, Bundy decides to defend himself in court. He is a law student after all, and a very confident one. For that, Bundy receives slightly more freedom from the judge than other prisoners. A typewriter, a desk, unlimited and untapped phone calls, and access to the law library in the courthouse. There he can move freely without shackles or handcuffs.
Oh, he's about to escape.
Bundy's trial is in full swing. During a recess, he goes to the library. His guard is in the hallway, smoking a cigarette. It is a sunny day. The sky is blue. And Ted Bundy jumps from a second-story window.
I knew it.
The fall is hard.
Yeah, I'm like, how does that not break his legs?
After landing, he immediately runs across the street, over a fence, and into an alleyway. From there, he sprints to a river, and from there, straight to the mountains. Bundy planned his escape for weeks, jumping from his bunk bed to strengthen his ankles, going through his exact escape route again and again, putting on a second layer of clothes under his courtroom outfit, practicing how fast he can change, getting a haircut, shaving his beard. A woman rushes into the courthouse and informs a guard that she saw a man jumping from one of the windows. The guards immediately sweep the floor. From the moment Bundy leapt from the windows, it takes them 10 minutes to realize he's gone. The police set up roadblocks. They send bloodhounds into the mountains and tell the residents to lock their doors. Radio stations and newspapers quickly cover the escape. 150 policemen are now hunting a killer on the loose. Ted Bundy wanders through the mountains. He has nothing with him, no money, no food, no plan. Only a light shirt and his pants, and since he defended himself in court, a map of the area that was used in the trial. A whole day, he hikes up the grassy hills and by nightfall manages to cross the Aspen Mountain. The next morning, however, is cold and rainy. So instead of wandering further south, he tracks back and finds a small cabin, where he stays for the night. On day 3, Bundy leaves the cabin. Now,
where do you get a gun from? No, somebody there's a gun inside the cabin just lying around, bro.
Better equipped. He has some food, warm clothes, and a rifle. On this day, the FBI joins the manhunt, bringing in helicopters. Despite the map, Bundy gets lost. When a rainstorm hits, he becomes even more disoriented. The cold is doing the rest. He eventually starts walking in circles and lands back at the cabin. There, he finds tracks of the search party. They're onto him. For 5 full days, Bundy is hiking through the hills. With his ankles swollen and his food running low, he finds himself back in Aspen. His only chance of escape is to find a car. At a golf course, he finally finds an old Cadillac with the keys inside. It's the morning of the 6th day of Bundy's escape. 2 police officers see a Cadillac zigzagging on the road. They stop the car, assuming it's a drunk driver. Instead, they find a sober but weak Ted Bundy. He lost over 20 pounds and barely managed to steer the car. His nose is wrapped in Band-Aid, and he wears glasses, but the officers easily recognize him. He is arrested only 2 blocks from where he jumped out of the window. Back in custody, Bundy now also faces charges for escape. He has to wear shackles and handcuffs when in court. It matters little to him. Almost immediately, he starts planning another escape.
There's no way he's escaping again, bro. What is the justice system doing, bro?
A guard brings Ted Bundy a warm meal to his cell and leaves, but Bundy doesn't touch it. Instead, he lifts himself up into a small hole in his ceiling. In the weeks prior, he used a hacksaw he got from another inmate on an already loose light fixture to cut open a hole. To fit in there, he had to lose weight, so he reduced his meal sizes by constantly complaining about the food as a cover. Bundy is prepared. He accumulated $700 from donations for his defense. In the weeks before his escape, he used the trapdoor regularly, searching for a way out, and he found one. The vent leads to a small apartment of a prison guard. Bundy crawls through the tight shaft. When he reaches the apartment, he hears voices.
Okay, but wouldn't the prison guard notice there's somebody crawling around in his vent still? Like, ain't no way that prison guard is so stupid. He didn't even think to check, like, what that noise in his vents was.
The guard and his wife are eating dinner. Bundy just sits there, waiting for his opportunity. The woman says, "Let's go to a movie tonight." "Sure, why not?" the guard replies. A few minutes later, the door slams shut, and Bundy drops into the apartment's bedroom. He puts on a pair of blue jeans, a gray turtleneck, and blue tennis shoes. Then he walks out of the street through the front door. This time, it takes the guards 17 hours before they realize what just happened. Bundy has long vanished. It is a quiet night on campus. The parties have mostly ended, and the local nightclub is closed for over an hour now. Nita Neary comes back from a date with her boyfriend. When she tries to enter her sorority house, Chi Omega, she notices that the door is unlocked. She enters and finds that the lights are still on. A few seconds later, she hears a loud noise from upstairs, followed by footsteps. A man comes rushing down the stairs. He's holding some kind of club in his hand.
Yep, she's dead.
He hastily opens the front door and runs outside. Nita wakes up the others, and they soon realize a monster has been in their house. 4 young women have been assaulted. 2 of them will die. In the following weeks, Ted Bundy tries abducting multiple women, but always fails. Until he finds 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. The girl is out in the rain.
He's a pedophile now. He's going after the young girls, bro. Smart Schoolboy 9 2.0 over here.
She is running across a basketball court to another classroom at her school when Bundy signals the girl to come over. She does. David Lee, a patrol officer from Pensacola, sits in his car when an orange Volkswagen passes by with its lights turned off. Lee knows his area well and realizes this car is most likely not from here. He follows the driver and checks the license plate. The car is stolen. Lee turns on his police lights and the car starts to speed away. But David Lee has no intention of letting the man escape. A few minutes later...
Wait, wasn't David Lee the same guy who got him all those years ago?
The Beetle finally stops. Bundy must have had a strange feeling of deja vu at this point.
Yeah.
This time, Bundy will not just get out of the car with his hands up. He will not say he's a student who watched a movie and got lost on his way home. This time, Bundy decides to fight. He gets out of the car. The officer points a gun at him. When the officer tries to cuff Bundy, he hits him in the face, kicks him off his feet. The officer fires a warning shot, and Bundy runs. Lee, now running right behind Ted, fires another shot, and the man falls to the ground. But Bundy hasn't been shot. It's a trick to grab the officer's gun. He fails.
This dude's so... I mean, Bundy... Really, bro?
The officer hits Bundy with his pistol and manages to arrest him. The hunt for America's most infamous killer has finally ended. Bundy's trial began
but there's actually no way he got away for a year after escaping from prison. Like, that's actually crazy.
At the Chi Omega sorority house. Soon after, he went to court for 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. Bundy tried to defend himself, and in both cases pleaded not guilty. 1 month later, on July 23rd, Ted Bundy was sentenced to death. A few days before his execution, Bundy confessed to a total of 36 murders. Newer DNA samples show that Bundy might have murdered over 100 people, starting his killings at the age of 14.
At the age of 14, he killed people. Because I mean, this dude was like a year younger than me and killing people. That's crazy.
What makes the trial of Ted Bundy stand out is not only his charming and likable demeanor, the ruthlessness of his murders, or even the fact that he managed to escape from prison twice. What makes Bundy's trial stand out was the trial itself. It was the first ever in U.S. history to be shown on national television.
3 murders, but is believed to be the killer of perhaps 40 women.
Not just another death row inmate convicted of Bundy made that mistake.
Since he defended himself in court, he had many opportunities to show his charming personality to the public. And many people were fascinated by him, especially young women.
How, bro? How? You're telling me this dude... Okay, I'm not even trying to be mean, but the guy here is glazing him, bro. You hop off that for a second,
Are you a little scared when you look at him?
Yes, it scares me to be in the same room with him, but I know there's other people in there.
I'm not afraid of him. He just doesn't look like the type to kill somebody. Every time he turns around, I kind of get that feeling, no, you know, gonna get me next, you know.
But yet you're fascinated by him.
Very, very.
Why do you do it?
I don't know.
From all those women in the courtroom, there is one who stood out. She believed in Bundy's innocence almost to the very end. Carol Ann Boone, Bundy's girlfriend. He proposed to her during court. After his conviction, they even had a child together.
Carol, do you want to marry me? Yes. And I want to marry you? Yes. And I do want to marry you.
Bundy's trial became an unprecedented media sensation. People all across
Carol's
the country
dumb.
were watching.
Bro, how dumb are you, Carol? You're telling me there's solid evidence that this man killed hundreds of people, right? And you're like, oh no, he didn't do it. I love him. He's my boyfriend.
The killer fighting for his life, trying to evade his death again and again for years. On the last day before his execution, television crews from all over the country came to Florida State Prison. Thousands of people gathered. They had signs with them and fireworks.
At one point, the celebration got out of hand.
T-shirts were sold with a phrase you could hear people chanting, "Burn, Bundy, burn." On January 24th, 1989, after spending 10 years on death row, Bundy was executed via electric chair. The person who flipped the switch was a woman.
Ted Bundy, even in death, stirred hatred.
Yo, I heard there's like a law, like if like the electric doesn't work the first time, you're not allowed to like redo it because that's considered torture. So like imagine he survived that, he would have not had to have done the electric chair ever again. It's crazy in my opinion.
Slow down, my young friend. You think you can touch the sky? Where did it all go wrong? Where did it all go wrong? Slow down, my young friend. You think you can touch the sky?
Alright, next. Hold on. Pull it up. Kento Bento. We react to this guy who escaped prison multiple times somehow.
The best
Yeah, this dude is a beast.
things in life never change. They just get better, like Hardy's original bag.
I'm Kento Bento. The incredible Japanese prison break.
This video was made possible by Dashlane. Download Dashlane for free if you never want to forget another password again at the link in the description. Aomori, Japan, 1936. Prisoner Yoshie Shiratori had had enough. He was forced to confess.
I'm gonna head out, but I fuck with you, bro. Keep it up. Thank you, bro. I love you, bro. I appreciate you, gang. Actually, guys, I'm gonna let y'all know right now, this is the last video of the stream, alright? So if y'all want to start heading out, go ahead, because I'm about to be done pretty soon.
Confessed to a murder he did not commit. Falsely imprisoned in Aomori prison. Beaten and tortured every night by prison guards. And, now worse, prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. In his mind, it was time to go. But Aomori prison wasn't the easiest to escape. Regardless, Yoshie Shiratori had nothing to lose, and so at 5:30 a.m., he made his move. He knew there would be a 15-minute
Might as well stick around for the last one. Yeah, all right, bro. I'm gonna try to finish this one as quick as I can. I'm gonna try to not like react as much. I'm just gonna let you all watch this one.
Gap in the patrol time, as he had studied the guard's routine for months. And when the coast was clear, he pulled out a metal wire which he had smuggled in from the bathhouse and started to pick the lock. This was originally the metal support ring that was wrapped around the bathing buckets inmates used to wash themselves. His hands were stiff from the wintry cold, but after a few minutes of picking, he had success, and his cell door swung open. But he wasn't out of the woods yet, because there were more locked doors ahead. He knew he only had a few minutes left.
Yo, how did he just pick that random lock with just 2 freaking pieces of metal? Yeah, where did he even get the metal from? From like the spoons or something?
Before the guards would return, and so he wasted no time attempting to pick his way through the remaining security doors. Now, fortunately for him, he was able to make it out of the facility, but the bad news was that he was only halfway to freedom. You see, he was still well within the search perimeter, which meant at any moment the alarm could go off and he'd still be caught. At 5:45 a.m., the guards returned, peering into his cell, and this—
Nah, but on a serious note, what would y'all do if y'all got falsely imprisoned and you were gonna be sentenced to death?
This is what they saw. Shiratori sound asleep in his futon bed. But of course, what they didn't realize was that they were looking at something else. A pile of loose floorboards underneath his duvet designed to trick them. It wasn't until the next—
Oh, that's smart, bro. Also, the Alcatraz prisoners had used like something like that. It was like a dummy, right? With like their faces too. This dude's actually thinking ahead.
Morning that they finally discovered the truth and the alarm was sounded. But by then, Shiratori was long gone. Now, he had escaped, but if you've watched any of our previous videos, you'll know that things aren't always as they seem. In fact, for Yoshie Shiratori, aka the prison break magician, this was only the beginning. 3 days later, he was caught trying to steal supplies from a hospital, and just like that, he was back in the slammer. But this time, for his escape attempt, he was sentenced to life in prison. He would never be with his family again, his wife and his daughter, and all the months of planning had led to just 3 days of freedom. It now seemed he'd be locked up for a very long.
I feel like that's not fair. I feel like he should be given a break. He was falsely accused of murdering somebody, and there was evidence suggesting that he did not do it. So I feel like he has a right to escape.
Time. 6 years later, in 1942, in the midst of the Second World War, Shiratori found himself transferred to Akita prison in Akita City. There, the guards treated him even worse than in Aomori. They had heard about Shiratori's previous escape and were determined to make an example out of him. They wanted to make sure he would never escape again. Along with the usual beatings, he was forced to partake in extreme
beatings? Yo, what did he do, bro? He did not deserve nothing, bro.
Manual labor, made to sleep on the hard concrete floor in the severe winter cold, and placed into solitary confinement for extended periods of time. Now, this was a specially made solitary confinement cell, which was very small and had a very high ceiling, with the walls covered with copper sheets so smooth that it was impossible to grip. In addition, there was almost no sunlight even in the daytime.
Yo, imagine this dude still somehow managed to climb this and get out. Like, how crazy would that be?
With the only window light coming from a small sealed skylight high above. This was a room designed to keep escape artists from escaping, and if that wasn't enough, the guards also made sure that Shiratori was handcuffed at all times. Now, despite the constant abuse, one of the guards, Kobayashi, in fact the head guard, took pity on him. Kobayashi never laid a finger and even seemed to check up on him from time to time, concerned for his well-being. Perhaps this made life a little more bearable for Shiratori, and it might have even been what kept his will alive all the way to the night of June 15th. It was a stormy night, and Shiratori was in the middle of one of his extended stays in solitary confinement.
Oh yeah, so this is like a window, all the snow's just gonna come in and he's gonna freeze to death.
Around midnight, one of the guards peered into his cell and couldn't believe his eyes. He opened the cell door and looked around in astonishment, as Yoshie Shiratori had vanished into thin air. All that was left was his handcuffs. So how did he do it? Well, there were a few assumptions the guards made that did not apply to Shiratori. For one, handcuffs simply didn't work on him. Shiratori was actually a master of getting out of handcuffs, and in fact had several methods to choose from. Here, he decided to go with the familiar lock-picking method, but he really could have gone with any of them. He had thoroughly scoured his surroundings to find anything that could be of use in an escape, and just like in Aomori prison, he was able to uncover a loose bit of wire. Perhaps it was from one of the items Kobayashi brought him, but this wasn't clear. After freeing himself from the cuffs, he placed his palms and soles of his feet on the smooth copper sheets.
What? I thought it was supposed to be impossible to climb. Like, I was just joking about that earlier, bro. I did not actually think this dude was about to climb through the window.
Started climbing the unclimbable wall. It turned out Shiratori was also an expert climber, with an uncanny ability to scale like a lizard. Once he reached the skylight above, he noticed that, yes, the window was sealed, but the wooden framing around it was starting to rot. And so thereafter, night after night, when the guards weren't looking, he'd climb the copper walls and loosen the framing, bit by bit. Afterwards, he'd climb back down and
Why are you telling me he did that over and over and over again for like weeks and months? Damn. Hey bro, might as well put the dude on a V2.
The handcuffs back on, as to not rouse suspicion. After a couple months, the window finally came loose, and from there, it was just about choosing the right day. He waited until a particular stormy night, so the guards wouldn't hear the footsteps on the roof. And that was it. He had escaped from prison again. Now this time, he wouldn't be caught. Or at least, not in the way you'd expect. 3 months later, on September 18th, the head guard, Kobayashi, was at home when he heard a knock on the door. To his surprise, it was the fugitive Yoshie Shiratori, unkempt and disheveled, and he needed a favor. A stunned Kobayashi took him in and fed him, all the while listening to what he had to say. Shiratori explained that he didn't actually mind being in prison, and that the only reason he escaped twice now was due to the tremendous abuse he suffered at the hands of the sadistic guards. Kobayashi...
So that's what I'm saying. These unreasonable conditions would make anybody want to escape. Like, if I actually had done a crime there, I would have escaped, honestly. Like, even if I was falsely accused and I hadn't done a crime, like, I would have just escaped just because of the torment and abuse.
Kobayashi, however, was the only one who treated him with any amount of respect, and so he felt he owed it to him to let him in on his grand plan. Now, this plan involved Shiratori willingly, yes, handing himself over to the Justice Department, where he could then personally make a case for how corrupt and barbaric the Japanese prison system was, and there needed to be reform. He wanted to campaign for change, and in the process, gain his legal freedom through a civil lawsuit. He felt this was the only way he could realistically end up with his family. This, of course, was a super ambitious plan, and as a fugitive on the run, he was well aware of that, which is why he needed Kobayashi, the well-respected head guard of Akita prison, to vouch for him, to strengthen his credibility. As the only guard who ever treated him right, he had a feeling Kobayashi would do the right thing. Minutes later, while Shiratori was in the toilet, Kobayashi called the police.
Bro, Kobayashi's such an L, dude. He really couldn't just help him out. He was willing to go back to prison, bro. Really, Kobayashi?
Maybe not a great plan. Just like that, Shiratori was back in prison, and this time, he vowed never to trust an officer of the law again. For the second escape, the courthouse added 3 more years to his life sentence. Now, Shiratori requested to be sent to a Tokyo prison, where the weather was warmer, as he couldn't stand the cold in the northern prisons. His previous stints had weakened him severely, but he was denied his request. Instead, the judge sentenced him to the infamous Abashiri prison in Hokkaido, the northernmost prison in Japan. No man had ever escaped from this wintry hellhole of a prison. It was now 1943, and the cold was unbearable in Abashiri, as the temperature in the cells was below freezing point. Whenever inmates received their prison food, the miso soup and soy sauce would often freeze up. In this temperature, a handcuffed Shiratori was thrown into an open cell in summer clothing, and he immediately felt the paralyzing...
In summer clothing, bro? Are these guys trying to torture him? He just escaped twice. Yeah, I get that, but like he didn't do anything. He doesn't deserve this.
Sting of cold air. Perhaps in a fit of desperation, he tried to force himself past the guards, but they were able to push him back and beat him down. An enraged and defiant Shiratori stood back up and vowed that he would escape from Abashiri prison, like he's always done, and that there was nothing they could do about it. In fact, he claimed there was little point even putting handcuffs on him, as he'd always find a way to break free. If not by lockpicking, then, well, this. He then proceeded
What? You told me he just snapped that in half like it was nothing? You're actually lying. Bro is the Hulk.
The chain of his handcuffs to the horror of the guards. It turned out Shiratori had another special ability. Aside from his outstanding climbing abilities, he also possessed incredible strength, almost superhuman strength. Back in Akita prison, he could have broken free of the cuffs the physical way if he didn't have to put them back on. Now, this was impressive, but it wasn't so smart to lay his cards on the table like that, as the guards were starting to build an escape profile on him. They knew he had lock-picking abilities, lizard-like climbing abilities, and now almost superhuman strength. And so they set out to devise the ultimate escape-proof cell, one that was sure to be Shiratori-proof. And they came up with this. The new cell had steel fixtures with a low chance of rot. Any openings, even the bars removed, were made smaller than his body, meaning there was no way he could physically fit through. He had specially made solid iron handcuffs that tied his hands behind his back, and leg cuffs that made him barely able to stand. These cuffs weighed 20 kgs each and had no keyhole, which meant they could not be lockpicked. And
okay, but does that really affect him, bro? Because as we saw, he has superhuman strength, so it's like not even gonna affect him. He could probably just do something anyway with it.
The only way they could be removed was by 2 metalwork specialists who would come once every few weeks to remove them in an arduous 2-hour process. It was at this point, and only this point, that he could even take a bath. And he certainly needed one, as weeks of being shackled up with no movement meant his cuff wounds were infested with maggots. On top of that, and as cold as it had already been, it wasn't even peak winter yet. Any strength he would have left would surely be nullified by the upcoming freeze. Though just in case, they still made sure to cut his already meager food portions in half. And so that was it.
In half? Are they trying to kill him? I thought they were just trying to sentence him in prison, bro.
Even for Shiratori, this was too much. As winter came, he succumbed to his fate. Every day, the guards would slide his meal through the opening, and he'd be forced to grovel like a dog. His hand and leg cuffs made every action awkward and uncomfortable, with even sleeping being a pain. There was no doubt life in Abashiri prison was absolute torture. Now, fast forward. Shiratori was somehow able to survive through the winter, and spring was coming. This meant he was starting to get his strength back. But still, what could he really do? He was literally in a bind. Months passed and, well, nothing seemed to happen. Then one night, in August, a guard in his office was doing some paperwork when he heard some shuffling on the roof. He wasn't sure what it was, but he decided to check on the prisoners. As he looked inside Shiratori's inescapable cell, he was stunned. The futon bed and prison garments—
Don't tell me he escaped out of the roof. There's no way, because there's no roof to escape from.
—were neatly folded up. The specially made 20 kg handcuffs and leg cuffs that would have required 2 specialists 2 hours to remove was placed on the side, and Shiratori was nowhere to be seen. He had finally fulfilled his promise to the guards. The alarm immediately sounded, but despite the work of the search party, it seemed he had truly disappeared. But how on earth did this happen? How did he escape from the fortress that was Abashiri prison? Well, preparation had started 6 months earlier. At the time, he didn't have the strength or stamina to mount any sort of escape, not to mention the restraints he was in. But one thing he did have was time and patience. Every day, the guards would slide his meal through, and while he struggled to eat his food off the floor, he always made sure to save a little bit of the miso soup in the corner. You see, every night, he would hobble awkwardly to the inspection window and splash a little of it on the steel frame. He would also dab some on his—
Oh, that's smart. That's low-key smart, bro. So tell me this dude has insane intelligence, insane strength, insane climbing ability. What other stats does he have, bro? He's like an anime character.
Handcuffs and leg cuffs. Now, his intention was for the salt content of the miso soup to oxidize the screws and bolts, eventually corroding and loosening it. After a month, this technique of rusting through the iron actually worked, and the first screw came out. The next few months saw screws and bolts coming loose, assisted by the use of the first screw as a sort of screwdriver. By the end of spring, he was able to fully remove his handcuffs and leg cuffs, as well as the steel frame of the inspection window. But there was a problem. The size of the opening was smaller than his body, which meant he couldn't fit through, a contingency thought out by the guards. What they didn't account for, though, was Shiratori's 4th ability, which involved being able to dislocate his joints at will. With this, he was now able to slide—
What? You tell me he fit through that tiny little hole by just dislocating his joints?
Opening like a caterpillar. This repertoire of skills, thus surely making him an honorary member of the X-Men.
Yeah.
With that, he climbed through a broken window in the roof and vanished. Impressively, Shiratori had now escaped from 3 prisons, as well as being the only man to ever escape Abashiri prison. Now, good on him for escaping, but this was northern Hokkaido, and the only direction he could have gone to was the cold, snowy mountains. Actually, the prison guards felt that they had the last laugh, because if the cold didn't get him, the mountain bears certainly would. Despite this likelihood, there was one person who stayed hopeful, and that was Shiratori's wife. But she was still worried, because even if he was alive, she knew he wouldn't be able to make it back to his family, as the authorities would be constantly on his tail. Which is why she was desperately and secretly hoping that Japan would lose the war, as that would enable the US to take over the country, meaning everyone would likely forget about her husband. Of course, she kept this to herself. But then, a year later, in August 1945, she got her wish. The Americans had now taken over the country's penitentiary system, and sweeping changes were being made. And it did seem, perhaps, that the manhunt for Yoshie Shiratori had now taken a back seat. Yet the question remained, where was he? And was he even alive? The answer was yes, he was alive, and living a solitary life, this time self-imposed. It turned out he had discovered an abandoned mine on a mountainside in the Hokkaido wilderness, and was able to make a home for himself. For food, he lived off nuts and berries, wild rabbits and raccoons, and was even able to learn to catch crabs from a stream by observing the habits of bears. Life was steady and safe, but after a while, curiosity got the better of him. And so after 2 years of isolation, he made his way down the mountain to a nearby village. What he saw astounded him. The streets were filled with signs written in English. The posters and flags, emblematic of the war effort, had vanished. And even more strange, young Japanese girls were holding hands with American soldiers. What on earth was going on? He grabbed a newspaper that had been set aside, flipped through the pages, and it was only then that he found out about the atomic bombs. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan had surrendered the previous year, and he couldn't believe it. As with his wife, he felt it was now pointless to hide, and so bid farewell to his old hunter-gatherer lifestyle. He headed south of Abashiri for the next 50 days, until he reached the city of Sapporo. At this point, he was starving, so he found himself a nice ripe tomato from a nearby field, which was a huge mistake. A farmer had spotted him and mistook him for a well-known local thief, which led to a scuffle, resulting in the farmer's abdomen being pierced by a blade. Sadly, he bled out and died.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you don't try to kill him, or maybe don't try to rob people's stuff.
But not before Shiratori was arrested for the crime. It wasn't long until police found out that they in fact had the infamous Yoshie Shiratori in their custody. For his multiple escapes and having now murdered the farmer, despite his claims of self-defense, he was sentenced to death by the district court of Sapporo. And in 1947, he was sent to Sapporo prison to await execution. Now, to ensure he wouldn't escape this time while on death row, he was placed under 24-hour surveillance, with 6 armed guards personally assigned to
imagine he still escapes this death.
To his watch. As for the cell itself, it was upgraded further from the one in Abashiri prison, with reinforced doors, ceilings, bars, windows. In fact, any openings were made smaller than the size of his head, not just his body, learning from the Abashiri escape, as while he may be able to dislocate his joints, he certainly can't dislocate his skull. As long as his head can't fit, they were good. The 6 guards were so confident, in fact, that they didn't even bother cuffing him. Now, Shiratori was getting old, and the odds of escaping by this point were looking slim. As his execution loomed near, there was little he could really do, and the guards knew that. They could see the desperation on his face, looking up, searching for an escape plan that they knew would never come. Though, still, just in case, they made sure to search his room every night while he was taking a bath in the bathhouse, inspecting the ceiling, skylight, and any other openings. A month passed, and winter was now coming, weakening him further, and the realization was starting to dawn on him. He grew increasingly despondent, staying in bed, refusing to wake up, despite the orders of the guards. This went on for a while until one morning, the guards had enough and entered the cell to discipline him. They flipped over the duvet, and he was gone.
What? How? How did he escape, bro? They literally chained up the cell and everything. There's no way he did.
This was not possible. How did he do it this time? Going back to when he was first placed under 24-hour surveillance with the 6 armed guards personally assigned to his watch. He had in fact conditioned them to look up and keep up from the very start. Not just because his previous escape attempts involved climbing through skylight windows on ceilings, but also his suspicious yet, as it turned out, very intentional behavior of constantly looking up to figure out an escape plan. Little did they know, it was all an act, and that he already had one. But it would be taking place precisely where they weren't looking. You see, it turned out the authorities were so concerned with him escaping through a window or skylight that they neglected to reinforce the bottom. This ironically ended up being his easiest and simplest escape, because all he had to do was remove the bolted floorboards, which wasn't easy, but he had experience, and using random cutlery and a miso soup bowl, dig his way to freedom. This
but wouldn't that take years though?
Took over a month, and he was able to hide his activities due to A, the guards not suspecting this approach, and B, the floorboard panels being put back in place every night after digging. The 6 guards thought they were keeping a good eye on him even at night, but with the hull consistently positioned underneath the futon and duvet, and it increasingly becoming the norm to refuse the orders of the guards to wake up, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Placing a pile of loose floorboards underneath the duvet to trick them was also a callback to his first prison escape in Aomori. So he had now escaped from prison 4 times, and by this point, the story is starting to get ridiculous. But this perpetual cycle of capture and escape was about to end, because a year later, in 1948, Shiratori was exhausted. He was in his 40s now, and this was a young man's game. One day, in the Kotoni neighborhood, still in Sapporo, as he stopped to rest, a policeman just happened to sit by his side for a smoke. He didn't know who Shiratori was, but he struck up a conversation with him. Shiratori, of course, was wary of his presence and tried to play it cool, all the while attempting to figure out a way to remove himself from the situation without being suspicious. Suddenly, the policeman did something unexpected, at least to him. He pulled out another cigarette and offered it to him. Shiratori was stunned. You see, cigarettes were expensive luxury items in Japan at the time, and the fact that someone offered it to him just out of the kindness of his heart brought tears to his eyes. Not
because you gotta think, he never would have had experience any of that. All he experienced was hate, pain, and torture. So this must be something that had blown his mind, to think that somebody could actually be kind to him.
Mentioned all his life he had been abused and mistreated by officers of the law, with even the head guard Kobayashi turning his back on him. And here was an instance of an officer treating him kindly, with respect, and with no prejudgment. As he smoked the cigarette, Shiratori couldn't help but tell the officer his full name, Yoshie Shiratori, and that he had escaped from Sapporo prison last year. In fact, he had escaped from prison 4 times in his life. It was strangely a relief to get it all off his chest, and he was even ready for the consequences. After the Kobayashi incident, he had vowed never to trust another officer of the law again. But the simple act of receiving a cigarette from a stranger broke him. Of course, he was arrested again, but this time, things were different. Maybe it was the fact that he willingly gave himself up, or that Japan's justice system was going through a change. But the High Court of Sapporo became sympathetic to Shiratori's plight, and some of his past claims were recognized, such as acknowledging the farmer's death as a legitimate case of self-defense. They also made note that throughout all 4 of his prison escapes, he didn't kill or injure a single guard, despite the abuse he may have suffered at their hands. At the end of the deliberation, the High Court dismissed the murder charge, revoking his death sentence, and instead sentenced him to just 20 years in prison. Further, they approved his request to be transferred to a Tokyo prison, where the weather was warmer. He was getting what he wanted. In Tokyo, he was sent to Fuchu prison, where, for the first time, the guards actually treated him well. It was a weird feeling. There were all these precautions and security measures in place to ensure that the infamous prison break magician wouldn't escape. But the truth was, Shiratori didn't really care anymore. Everything he'd been fighting against, the mistreatment from guards, the death penalty, even the northern climate, was no longer of concern. And he was at peace. There was no need to escape anymore. He finally accepted his punishment, and for the remainder of his sentence, acted as a model prisoner. Just 14 years later, in 1961, he was released on parole. And for the first time in a long time, he was truly a free man. He decided to head back to Aomori, where it all began, and meet up with his daughter, who, by this point, unfortunately, was the only family member he had left. For his incredible escapes, Yoshie Shiratori became a legend, an anti-hero in Japan, but it was very much the opposite for the country's penitentiary system, which had somehow allowed him to escape time and time again. This was a national embarrassment for Japan, but just as preventing criminals from breaking out of the system is vital for the safety of society, so is preventing them from breaking into the system. Your system, that is.
Well, guys, that's the end of the stream, but look, that was a good end to this story. If y'all like that stream, go ahead and join my Discord. It should be linked to one of my videos and just suggest what I should watch next on stream. Well, I'll see y'all later. Have a good day.